The Bellflower City Council. It is Monday, June 8th, 2020. It is 5:33 by my watch, and I am calling this meeting to order. Before we begin, please note that all public meetings will be recorded. When a participant logs in via their computer or calls in to join the meeting, their name and/or phone number will be visible to all participants. Unless you are providing public comment, your audio will be muted and your video will be disabled. Persons wishing to be audience members to the meeting may do so anonymously. Anonymous participants, however, will not be recognized for public comment. Persons who seek to bypass the city's host controls will be dropped and blocked from the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation. A roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton.
Here.
Councilmember Hamada.
Here.
Councilmember Santinez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
Here.
Mayor Garza.
Here. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Item number 3, closed session items. Mr. Stewart.
There are 3 items for the closed session tonight. The first is conference of legal counsel existing litigation, and that is the application regarding Cal American Water Company purchase of the Bellflower Municipal Water System assets. The second item is conference of legal counsel initiation litigation. This is one case in regards to property at 9735 Harvard Street. Third item is conference of legal counsel anticipated litigation, and that is a property located at 9921 Flora Vista Street.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Colleagues, anybody have any recusals, any conflicts regarding any of the closed session items for today? All right, hearing none. Madam Deputy City Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to make any comments? But before that, I'm sorry. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature under the participants tab, or if by telephone, press *9 to raise your hand. You will be called upon by the Deputy City Clerk in the order received. Your microphone will be then unmuted so that you can provide your comments. So now, Madam Deputy City Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to make any comments regarding the 3 items to be considered under closed session?
Mayor, I don't see anyone in the public at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. So now, item number 4, we will recess to closed session. Public participation is not allowed during closed session. The virtual meeting will remain open during the pendency of the closed session. Upon concluding, we will resume the open session and announce any reportable actions from closed session at that point in time. So it is 5:35 by my watch, and we will recess to closed session. Thank you. Meeting of the Bellflower City Council. It is Monday, June 8th, 2020. It is 7:01 by my watch, and I am calling this meeting to order. We are reconvening for open session. During our closed session, there is no reportable action to report. Before we begin, please note that all public meetings will be recorded. When a participant logs in via the computer or calls in to join the meeting, their name and/or phone number will be visible to all participants. Unless you are providing public comments, your audio will be muted and your video will be disabled. Persons wishing to be audience members to the meeting may do so anonymously. Anonymous participants, however, will not be recognized for public comment. Persons who seek to bypass the city's host controls will be dropped and blocked from the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation. Item number 6, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton.
Here.
Councilmember Hamada.
Here.
Councilmember Santinez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
Here.
Mayor Garza.
Here. Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Up next, item number 7, invocation. This evening will be led by Councilmember Sunny R. Santa Ines. Mr. Santa Ines.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. O most gracious Lord, we come to you for your continued protection, guidance, and blessings. Please continue to watch over the members of the military and first responders and their families so that they can continue to protect us. Please continue to watch over our medical professionals and caregivers and their families so that they can continue to provide us with much needed care. As businesses start to reopen and other activities resume, please continue to protect us from COVID-19. Please watch over those who are protesting peacefully so that their message can be heard. Please watch over those who are sick, unemployed, and those who are homebound. Please provide them with the strength and healing that they need. We pray for those who died recently, especially George Floyd, Kathy Willenga, Maria Antonieta Ruiz Blancarte, the mother-in-law of Mayor Garza. Please welcome them into your kingdom and provide their loved ones with the much-needed healing and comfort. As we discuss the items before us this evening, please guide us, enlighten us, and give us the wisdom to decide what is best for the city of Bellflower. We ask all this through your Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you now and forever. Amen. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. That was beautiful. Item number 8, City Council announcements. So let me start that off with, as part of the City of Bellflower's response to COVID-19, the Parks and Recreation staff has been and will continue to conduct wellness check phone calls with Bellflower seniors registered in current programs. These calls provide a safe and convenient way to check on the well-being of our seniors, assess their current needs, and connect them to resources. If a senior cannot be reached for a prolonged period of time, staff will coordinate an on-site check with the Public Safety Department. For more information on the program or to register, please call area code 562-866-8614. Mayor Pro Tem Dan Coops.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you're operating or ready to reopen your Bellflower business, the Economic Development Department is here to help. Our staff is available for questions related to reopening measures and are also helpful by offering sidewalk decals and window clings to remind customers of social distancing. Reserve your free decals and clings. Call 562-804-1424, extension 2249. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Coops. Councilmember Ray Dutton.
Thank you, Mayor Garza. The YMCA preschool is now open for enrollment to families in need of care. The preschool has been implemented with physical distancing modifications and is using safe practices. For more information about this enrollment, you can call 562-279-1624. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dutton. Councilmember Sunny Santa Ynez, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The California Department of Motor Vehicles is encouraging eligible customers with expiring driver licenses and identification cards to take advantage of the easy-to-use online renewal system, including Californians who previously were required to renew at a DMV field office. Also, the federal government will begin enforcing Real ID on October 1st, 2021. That is 1 year later than previously announced. For more in-person or virtual services information, please visit www.dmv.ca.gov. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Santa Ynez. Councilmember Raymond Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, good evening, Bellflower. See, the Bellflower City Council previously approved a survey related to citizen satisfaction about living in Bellflower and the services that are important to residents. The survey is currently being conducted via telephone and email. There will be 500 randomly selected Bellflower registered voters. The survey was authorized by the City Council and is not a scam. So if you get it, please provide your input. Thank you, Bellflower. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada, for that. That's a truly important survey. So next, item 8B. So that's a presentation I would like to proclaim June as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, otherwise known as LGBTQ Pride Month. The city of Bellflower is a welcoming community and recognizes the importance of equity and freedom. It is imperative that people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, feel safe, valued, empowered, and supported by the community and community leaders. Bellflower is strengthened and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant character of our city. Therefore, I, Juan Garza, Mayor of the City of Bellflower, California, and on behalf of my colleagues on the Bellflower City Council, hereby proclaim and recognize June 2020 as LGBTQ Pride Month. Thank you. And on to item 8C. Next, I would like to proclaim June as Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, otherwise known as PTSD Awareness Month. Post-traumatic stress disorder can occur after a person experiences trauma, including, but not limited to, the stress of combat, assault, abuse, accidents, natural disasters, and it affects 8 million adults in the United States annually. Many brave men and women in the United States Armed Forces, including my brothers and sisters, who proudly serve our nation and risk their lives to protect our freedom, deserve the investment of every possible resource to ensure their lasting physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Combat-related PTSD stress among our men and women in the armed forces is significantly pronounced, especially with the amount of wars that we've been in lately. And also given that they are often exposed to highly traumatic events for weeks, months, and even years. Raising awareness of this condition is necessary to remove the stigma and to encourage those suffering to seek proper and timely treatment that may save their lives. All citizens suffering from PTSD deserve our consideration, and those who are affected by PTSD from the wounds received while protecting our freedom, they deserve our respect and special honor. Therefore, I, Juan Garza, Mayor of the City of Bellflower, California, and on behalf of my colleagues on the Bellflower City Council, hereby proclaim and recognize June 2020 as PTSD Awareness Month. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to item number 9. Mr. Stewart.
This is the time set aside for the public to address the city. I may be muted out. Can you hear me, Juan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Public comments. This is the time set aside for the public to address the City Council on matters not listed on the agenda. Those wishing to speak on an agenda item must utilize one of the methods listed on page 2 of the agenda. You will be given 3 minutes to address the City Council. Attempts to provide comment at times not designated on the agenda may result in the city dropping you from the meeting.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stewart. To members of the public, if you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature under the participants tab, or if by telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand. You will be called upon by the Deputy City Clerk in the order received. Your microphone will be then unmuted so that you can provide your comments. Thank you. And with that, Madam Deputy City Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to make any comments during our public comment period?
Mayor, I'll give the public a moment just to utilize the raise hand feature.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm not seeing anyone wishing to present public comment.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Deputy City Clerk. So with that, let's move on to item number 10, public hearings.
The first one is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say item 10A, Mr. Stewart.
Okay, the first item is consideration of possible action to conduct a public hearing to adopt resolution number 20-25, a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to apply for, receive, and approve grant funds for the permanent local housing allocation program. And I believe Mr. Seiss has the staff report for us.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Seiss, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. I'm going to share my screen really quick for a PowerPoint presentation.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may make a quick announcement regarding the PowerPoint presentations.
Yes, please.
Thank you. It came to our attention that the PowerPoint slides may be partially covered on the right-hand side due to the video boxes. And in order to fix this, you could go up to the top of your screen under View Options and select the side-by-side mode. That will allow you to view the PowerPoint completely.
That's great. It works. Thank you so much. Mr. Sais.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stewart, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The city is conducting a public hearing to receive comments and adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee or receive and approve grant funds for the state's permanent local housing allocation program. In 2017, the state approved SB2, also known as the Building Homes and Jobs Act, which established a $75 recording fee for real estate documents recorded with the county. The fees are collected by the state and allocated to local governments to facilitate the development and increase the supply of affordable housing in California. And in 2020, eligible cities can receive a new subset of SB2 called Permanent Local Housing Allocation Funds. And according to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD, the city is entitled to receive approximately $3.1 million over the next 5 years. Year one funds are estimated at about $514,000. The funds must be used for housing projects or programs to address unmet housing needs. And funds are estimates and may fluctuate based on the actual number of real estate transactions in each year. The allocation formulas after year 5 are subject to change by the states. In order to receive PLHA funds, the city must submit an application to HCD with the proposed 5-year plan, approved and adopted by resolution. And the city's 5-year plan proposes to use the funds for operational costs for the New Hope shelter, which is an eligible PLHA expense. The application deadline is July 27th, 2020, and funds will be awarded between August and October 2020. Should resolution number 20-25 be adopted, staff is prepared to submit the city's application as soon as June 9th. A recommendation tonight is to open the public hearing, take documentary and testimonial evidence, and after considering the evidence, adopt a resolution number 20-25, or alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. That completes my presentation. Staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Mr. Sais. Let's go to my colleagues on the City Council for any questions. Let's start off with Councilmember Raymond Hamada, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No real questions, but some comments. Again, I want to thank staff for the thorough report. And again, thank them for staying on top of this. It's always good to receive grant money, so that's coming up, and it's very timely. I'm glad to see that it could be designated for the shelter. So it's another great opportunity to relieve us of some of our costs. So very good. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada. Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. How about Councilmember Sunny Santaines?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I want to echo Councilmember Hamada's comment. I want to thank staff for finding this money. It couldn't come at a better time. We need this money very badly, as we'll discuss later on in one of the agenda items. Secondly, I just wrote a check last week to record the grant deed. I thought that the fee was very stiff because I wrote a check for $112 for recording. And after reading the staff report where the money is going, I think that money is well spent. So with that, thank you again for getting this funding, and I hope that it will continue especially with the homeless situation that we have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Santa Ynez. Councilmember Dutton.
Yeah, I'd also have comments that I'd like to echo my colleagues. It is a good thing that we don't have to match any of these funds if we're eligible. We'll obviously be eligible if we're picked for this grant. And also, it couldn't happen at a better time, and we're in a position to probably shine having a shelter, and with what we're doing is outside the box. I'm just saying there's got to be less competition against us for applying for this grant, or we'll float to the top quite easy. And I think we're in a very good position to get the funds. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dutton. My comments were already said before, so thanks to my colleagues for that. At this point in time, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Is there a motion to open it up?
I'll move that motion, Mr. Mayor.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Santa Ynez. Is there a second?
Coops will second it.
All right, so Mayor Pro Tem Coops is second. Without objection, that'll be the order. Madam Deputy City Clerk, is there any member of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Myra, can you, or I'm sorry, Travis, can you take down your PowerPoint for a moment? I can't see the public's hands. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Travis. Mayor, I don't see anyone at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Deputy City Clerk.
Move we close the public hearing.
Great. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So a motion by Councilmember Dutton, second by Councilmember Hamada. Without objection, that will be the order. Gentlemen, any final questions or comments of staff?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 20-25.
Great. There's a motion. Is it motion by Councilmember Dutton, second by Councilmember Hamada. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Santa Ynez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops,
Aye.
Mayor Garza.
Aye. Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. All right, let's move on to item 10B. Mrs. Stewart.
This is consideration and possible action to conduct a public hearing to adopt resolution number 2028, a resolution authorizing the city manager designee to submit the city's 2020 to 2025 consolidated plan, including the 2021 annual action plan, to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and approving the city's 2020 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And that's some combination of Mr. Delalonga and Mr. Saiz again.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Stewart. Mr. Delalonga or Mr. Saiz, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Stewart. As required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, the city is conducting a second public hearing to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to submit the city's 2020-2025 consolidated plan, which includes the fiscal year 2020-2021 annual action plan to HUD, and approving the city's 2020 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Every 5 years, HUD requires entitlement jurisdictions that receive community development block grant funds and home funds to submit a consolidated plan, which is a 5-year plan for the use of CDBG and home funds. To submit a consolidated plan, which is a 5-year plan for the use of CDBG and home funds, like I said, you do have the annual action plan, which is that 1-year plan, which describes the anticipated activities for the upcoming program year. The first year's action plan will be included as a component of the consolidated plan. A condition of the consolidated plan requires the city to affirmatively further fair housing and conduct an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. This is also known as the AI. An AI is a review of policies, procedures, and practices within the community that affect the location, availability, and accessibility of housing and current residential patterns and conditions relating to fair housing choice. The following table is a summary of the draft consolidated plan, goals, and priorities. The first goal is to improve and conserve the supply of affordable housing, and this will be accomplished through the home improvement program. The second goal of neighborhood preservation will be accomplished through code enforcement. The third goal to develop affordable housing will be accomplished by contributing community housing development organization funds to a qualified CHOTO project. And the fourth goal to affirmatively further fair housing choice will be accomplished Fair Housing Foundation. And the public services goal, which is goal number 5, will be accomplished through the Bellflower Volunteer Center. And the 6th goal of job creation and retention will be accomplished through Kingdom Causes Bellflower's Good Soils program and the recently approved Small Business Assistance Program. And the goal addresses the city's obligation to repay a CDBG Section 108 loan taken out in 2004 for downtown improvements. And the 8th goal is for planning and administration, which helps fund housing consultant and staff time spent on planning and administering these programs, as well as ensuring that the programs are in compliance with HUD regulations. So in fiscal year 2020-2021, the city will receive approximately $915,000 in CDBG funds. The city anticipates approximately $539,000 in carryover and expects to receive $5,500 in program income. Total estimated funding you'll see is about $1.4 million. The proposed CDBG budget and activities for this next fiscal year are as follows. Up to 20% of CDBG funds can be used for administration of the program. Staff has budgeted about $183,000 for staff and consultant costs in fiscal year 2020-2021. Next, CDBG funds can be used to support public service agencies that provide vital services in the community. And staff received and approved 3 applications from the Housing Foundation, Kingdom Causes Bellflower's Good Soils program, and the Bellflower Volunteer Center. So staff recommends funding the Fair Housing Foundation at $18,000. They provide fair housing services to residents to prevent discrimination. Next, staff recommends funding Kingdom Causes Bellflower's Good Soils program at $25,000. Kingdom Causes offers employment opportunities and training through their Good Soils Industries program. Next, the city has budgeted approximately $121,000 of CDBG for the Volunteer Center, which recruits, trains, supervises, and recognizes individuals who volunteer their time to serve the low and moderate income residents of Bellflower. All 3 of these public service agencies participated in the program in prior years and met their goals without any issues. Each year, CDBG partially funds code enforcement activities that address blight in CDBG eligible areas. You'll see the city has budgeted approximately $296,000 to continue these activities. Next, staff recommends funding the Small Business Assistance Program at $320,000 for next fiscal year. Now, $200,000 of this amount is estimated carryover from the 2019-2020 fiscal year Small Business Assistance Program, and the additional $120,000 is additional CDBG carryover. Lastly, the city continues to budget its debt service payments for its Section 108 loan that was used for several capital improvements in the town center area. This was a 20-year, $7 million loan taken out in 2004, and the loan will be paid off at the end of the 5-year consolidated plan. In fiscal year 2020-2021, the city will receive approximately $369,000 in home funds, and the city anticipates approximately $1.18 million in carryover. Program income will vary annually based on loan principal, interest, and equity sharing payments returned to the city during the fiscal year. So staff is using just a nominal amount of $1,000. And the program income that the city receives is reinvested back into the home program. And you'll see the total estimated funding is about $1.5 million for home funds. So staff has budgeted first about $37,000 for staff and consultant costs. The next line you'll see staff budgeted $250,000 for the home improvement program, with $80,000 specifically set aside for mobile home improvement grants. The home improvement program provides loans and grants to qualified low-income homeowners who wish to make qualifying improvements to their home and or repair health and safety issues. A total budget of about $1.2 million is set aside for 1 or more CHODO projects. This amount includes a $784,000 carryover from the CHODO line item in the previous year, and a CHODO must be a nonprofit agency that will rehabilitate or construct affordable housing for low-income residents. In the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, it presents a demographic profile of the city, and it assesses fair housing issues among special groups and evaluates the ability of fair housing choices for all residents. So it also analyzes the conditions in the private market and public sector that may limit the range of housing choices or impede a person's access to housing. This was a very comprehensive analysis that was completed by the city's housing consultant, and the AI aligns with the fair housing priorities in the consolidated plan. So with all that, our recommendation tonight is to open the public hearing, take documentary and testimonial evidence, and after considering the evidence, adopt resolution number 20-28, or alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. So that completes my presentation. Staff and our housing consultant, Anna Lanou, are available for any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saez, for that presentation. Let's move on to questions from my colleagues on the City Council. Why don't we start off with Councilmember Ray Dutton?
Yeah, I'm good. I have no questions there, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dutton. Up next, how about Councilmember Sunny Santaines?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a point of clarification, a question. First question, Travis, is there a time limit in terms of carryover funds?
Oh, so the time limit for CDBG funds has been, that lapse deadline has been delayed and kind of pushed off from HUD. So they've stopped with the time clock kind of for CDBG funds temporarily. And with home funds, we have the CHODO funds that need to be expended by September 2025. So that's that CHODO project or CHODO projects that we can use those funds for. And that's just an affordable housing project.
Okay, and that's on the CHODO funding. Do you have any kind of ideas for how this money will be invested?
So what we've done in the past,
any ideas?
So we put what's called a RFQ, so a request for qualifications, out last year to get a feel for some potential CHODOs that had an interest in developing in the city, and we kind of received more rehabilitation projects, not so much developing new affordable housing stock. So we've been talking with, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So we're looking for development of affordable housing.
Correct, yes, to increase the city's affordable housing stock.
Okay, all right. So it's conceivable that this pot of money will grow in the next 4 or 5 years.
Yes, so unless we have a CHODO project come up and we can spend the funds. So the idea with these funds is that we can build a pot big enough to make a significant contribution to an affordable housing project to make it more feasible. So these projects are really expensive. So by us building up this pot, we can contribute a more significant contribution to a CHODO for the project.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting into, because if you look at this and kind of project how much funding will be available in the next 4 or 5 years, it's going to be a significant amount of money.
Yes, yeah, if we continue to carry it over and build that pot, because you'll see we receive about around $350,000 of home entitlement money each year. Continue to budget a portion of that. We have to budget at least 15% towards CHODOs, but if we continue to put a little bit more like we've been doing, yeah, we will definitely have a significant amount to contribute.
Okay, that's good. Now, and then final question is on the Small Business Assistance Program. Is this the one that we approved last meeting, where we're gonna give grants of $10,000 to 30 businesses?
That's correct, yes. So what we're doing is we added this money to the fiscal year 2020-2021 action plan, just to make sure that the program funds get expended, and we also want to continue to continue with the program into next fiscal year. So
conceivably, we can provide more money next year.
Correct. So you'll see that, right? So that $320,000, 200,000 of that is carryover from the recently approved program. What we're doing is we're currently finishing the review and rating of applications, and we anticipate to have a portion of that $300,000 that was approved recently distributed by the end of the month. And then what we're doing is we're carrying over $200,000 of that into next fiscal year, so we can continue the program and so we don't have any issues with our action plan next year.
Okay, very good. And finally, I just want to thank you and Jim and our consultant for this very comprehensive report. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Santa Ynez. Councilmember Raymond Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, thank you, staff, for the report. We did have a thorough discussion at our first hearing in March. And as I mentioned during that meeting, since there is noted that Kingdom Causes Bellflower is a recipient of some of the funding, I just want to disclose that I'm on their board of directors, and I'm a volunteer. So at this point, I have no conflict with participating on this matter. Again, I want to comment good things. Again, our focus on public service activities, social programs, and especially the small business assistance program. So it's very timely, and there's money there, and looking forward to getting businesses back in business. Staff, again, just maybe a point of education for everybody, that the additional CDBG money that's coming under the CARE Act, that's a separate pool of funds from this.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Just one, and that's at a tune of roughly 580,000.
It's about $538,000.
Oh, 38,000. Okay, wish it was 580. But no, again, guys did a thorough job on the analysis of impediments. So definitely that I think covers again all the potential issues that could come up. So again, great job, staff, and looking forward to the money well spent. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada. Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our resident accountant, Sunny, asked the questions that I had concern for, so I'm good with what we have. We had discussed this before and know that what we have allocated has been pretty well indicated, is permanent for the year. And I think we've made some good decisions on how to support the activities that are really going to be needed in the coming year. So again, I want to thank staff for putting this together, and I'm proud of what you've got here, and I think it'll work well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Coops. You actually summarized my exact feelings as well. So again, thank you, staff, for all your hard work. Great job today. So with that, why don't we open up the public hearing? Is there a motion for that?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion by Councilmember Santa Ynez and a second by Councilmember Hamada. Without objection, that will be the order. Madam Deputy City Clerk, would there be a member of the public that may have an interest in speaking on this item?
Yes, Mayor, I'll give the public just a moment to utilize that feature.
No problem.
Mr. Barnett of Kingdom Causes. Mr. Barnett,
Great.
if you'll give me just a moment to get the timer on the screen, and then you can go ahead and begin. Go ahead, Mr. Barnett.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. Thank you so much for letting me come on a second. I just want to say thank you guys for everybody for helping out with this presentation and then always being a big supporter of ours. Tomorrow I'm hiring one more Bellflower resident, which will take us up to, we're going to have 10 employees, and 6 of them are Bellflower residents. And we're continuing to go out there and continue to work and try to build up these guys. And we just started launching our virtual classes over at Little House right now until the COVID will let us go back in. They were having some issues with programming, so we kind of all set up Zoom meetings and all that. So we're continuing trying to help support Little House. And we're also trying to support the school district with passing out the food. And I'm really proud of our city and all the hard work you guys do. And that's all I really got. I just want to say thank you and give you a little update.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Barnett. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you for all you do for our community.
Thank you.
Madam Deputy City Clerk, maybe another member of the public wishing to make comment?
Mayor, I'm not seeing anyone else at this time.
Great. Thank you so much for that. My
Mayor,
bad,
we lost
sorry.
you.
With that, I will consider a motion to close a public hearing.
Move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you so much. Motion by Councilmember Dutton and a second by Councilmember Sunny Santa Ynez. Without objection, that will be the order. Gentlemen, any final thoughts, questions? If not, is there a motion?
Not hearing any, Mayor. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 20-28.
Great, there's a motion.
I'll second that. Ray beat me again. All right.
Okay, great. So there's a motion by Councilmember Dutton and a second by Councilmember Hamada. Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Santinas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops,
Aye.
Mayor Garza.
Aye. Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Let's move on then to item number 11, which is ordinances and resolutions for consideration. We have none this evening. Item number 12, consideration items. Item 12A, Mr. Stewart.
This is consideration of possible action to approve the proposed budget and other adjustments for fiscal years 2019-2021. By we to lead it, I don't want to steal from Kay's thunder, but this is the adjustments we're asking for to get through at least the next 90 to 120 days as we work through this COVID virus impact on our budget. And Mr. Reed will have the remainder of the staff report for you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stewart and Mr. Ree. Before we begin, if I could just make just a quick comment for the indulgence of our audience. COVID-19 has affected us all in many different ways. It's also affected our city, and fiscally, it has deeply affected our city. And so what we're here tonight is to see how much of an impact it's had on us fiscally. So with that, Mr. Ree, welcome and thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, great. To provide a brief background, back in March, the state of California and LA County issued stay-at-home orders shutting down all non-essential businesses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Subsequently, in May, these orders were modified to allow reopening of lower-risk businesses. However, the abrupt and massive business shutdowns and disruptions caused major economic downturn, and the current unemployment rate has surpassed the level experienced during the Great Recession. The business activity at City Hall has been highly limited and by appointment only, and parks and recreation programs and activities have ceased for the time being. The decline in the city's revenues is expected to be drastic in 2020, and the economic recovery is expected to be gradual. This is HDL's forecast of sales tax revenues published in April. Their analysis includes estimated impacts of COVID-19 on 8 major industry categories or groupings, but on a statewide total level, HDL expects the first quarter sales tax revenue to be lower overall by 8%, and the second quarter that we're in now to be drastically lower by 36%. And next fiscal year to be lower by 2% compared to this fiscal year. Based on staff's review of the city's revenues, the impact on the general fund revenues is expected to be broad and significant. In this fiscal year 2019-20, the general fund revenues are expected to decline by approximately $1.4 million. And in the next fiscal year 2020-21, the general fund revenues are expected to decline by another $1.6 million. In addition to these revenue declines, the city is expected to have approximately $400,000 in sales tax revenues deferred by 12 months. This is because of a new program created by a state agency due to the pandemic. And this issue will be discussed more in detail on slide 11. This slide shows the general fund revenues during the Great Recession and the amount of time it took to recover. During the Great Recession, the general fund revenues declined from the pre-recession level of $26.8 million to $24.2 million over the course of 5 years. And this is about a 10% decline. It then took a little over 3 years to recover back to the pre-recession level. A 10% decline based on next fiscal year 2020-21 budget is about $3.3 million. These are staff's proposed budget and other adjustments to make up for the estimated revenue shortfalls in the general fund. First one is hiring freeze and personnel cuts and savings totaling $300,000 over 2 fiscal years. And second one is various budget cuts and savings identified by the department heads totaling about $1.1 million. Third item is to shut down during Christmas and New Year's holidays. This will save about $70,000 and involves 5 work days. And we have further information on slide 10. Fourth item is to provide for certain additional costs we have identified of $320,000. This will also be discussed later on slide 9. Fifth item is to use the successor agency loan repayments totaling $525,000. Sixth item is use of municipal water system loan repayments of $485,000. The municipal water system budget for fiscal year 2020-21 has not yet been adopted. If the council were to adopt or approve this line item, then we'll incorporate the loan repayment of $325,000 for fiscal year 2020-21. Seventh item is increase the general fund transfer from the gas tax fund in the amount of $700,000. And the eighth item is capital projects cuts and use of available project balance totaling about $1.1 million. All of these items total $3.9 million in proposed cuts and adjustments. And with the estimated revenue shortfalls of $3 million, we have a balance or cushion of about $879,000 available for any additional shortfalls we may not have accounted for. This slide shows various budget cuts and savings identified by the department heads. They include deputy overtime, probation officer, crossing guards, contract services for planning, cannabis audit, traffic signal maintenance, parks and recreation programs, and other budget cuts and savings, document conversion in planning and building and safety transfer reduction, and city clerk's office budget cuts and savings. All of these items total about $1.1 million in budget cuts and savings. This slide shows the general fund project cuts from aquatic center replastering, outdoor pool in the amount of $175,000, Thompson Park resurfacing of basketball courts in the amount of $25,000, Courage Park replacement of pitching machines at $32,000, replacement of electrical panels and painting of main building of $40,000, and City Hall replacement of front glass doors and painting of auditorium walls of $30,000. These project cuts total $302,000, and together with the proposed use of available project fund balance of $768,000, we have approximately $1.1 million in cuts and adjustments. These are certain new cost items we have identified. First one is a tax ballot measure for November of this year, should we have one. Second one is unemployment benefits related to the personnel cuts of $100,000. Third item is temperature check services at City Hall. This item will be a contract service and we'll be checking the temperature of everyone entering City Hall. Fourth item is FEMA grant match of $80,000. All of these 4 new items total $320,000. Regarding staff's proposal to shut down during the Christmas and New Year holidays, we're requesting that 5 days, these are work days highlighted in yellow, to be closed. They are December 21st, 22nd, 28th, 29th, and 30th. Full-time employees will be allowed to use their accrued leave hours if the City Hall becomes closed on these days. In addition to the revenue declines we're experiencing, the state took certain actions to cause sales tax delays to the cities. The first one is Governor's Executive Order in March granting a 90-day extension on the first quarter 2020 sales tax returns and payments. This applies to businesses with less than $1 million in quarterly sales tax liability, so most businesses qualify. The due date is now July 31st instead of April 30th. This 90-day delay in some sales tax payments to the city may not be significant, but the complete data for the sales tax will not be available also for another 3 months. So we will not have this data until sometime in September or October of this year. The next item, California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, or CDTFA, has also implemented a 12-month sales tax deferral program. This applies to businesses less than $5 million in taxable annual sales to defer paying up to $50,000 of sales tax liability. This is a 12-month interest-free loan through July 31st of next year. And businesses will have to enter into a payment plan with CDTFA. Per HDL's estimate, this will cause a cash flow issue to the city of approximately $400,000. It also has the effect of shifting the current fiscal year 2019-20 sales tax revenue to be booked in the next fiscal year 2020-21. Staff's proposal is to use the general fund reserve balance to provide the necessary cash flows. This is staff's caveat. Due to the massive and abrupt business closures and economic uncertainties, the revenue projection is extremely difficult. As a result, the revenue projection will be closely monitored against the actual revenue collections, and it will require updating as new and additional data become available. Any material deviation in the future will be brought back to the City Council for further consideration. In the future, if additional budget cuts are necessary, then the following could be the options that the City Council may consider. Continue the hiring freeze, continue deferring non-urgent capital and maintenance projects, cut additional operating, contract, and program costs, solicit discounts on current contracts, freeze, defer, or limit pension and retiree medical pre-funding, as well as vacation and sick leave cash outs, and salary and wage increases. The council can also consider voluntary retirement incentive program, voluntary work hour reduction program, furloughs, layoffs, and shutting down facilities that are deemed less essential. And some of these items require union negotiation. In addition to the financial challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the city currently faces two other challenges. One is New Hope shelter operation, and the other is sale of municipal water system. For the New Hope shelter operation, including the construction costs and currently available grants and $2 million general fund funding authorized by the council, the first year operation is expected to result in a deficit of $1.3 million. And the second year deficit is estimated at $2.1 million. If no other grants or new revenue sources become available, then the general fund will most likely have to pay for the entire shortfall with the available reserve balance. The available general fund balance at June 30th, 2019 was $13.3 million. Subsequently, during this fiscal year, the city sold property for $2.5 million, and the council provided $2 million for the New Hope shelter costs. And if we were to provide an additional allocation required for the New Hope shelter of $1.3 million for the year one deficit, then the estimated available general fund balance will be approximately $12.5 million. And this amount includes $8 million set aside for the cash flow needs and emergencies. With regard to the sale of the municipal water system, on November 8th, 2016, the voters of Bellflower approved Measure W to authorize the sale of the municipal water system to California American Water Company, or CalAM, in the amount of $17 million. However, this sale was subsequently challenged by the California Public Advocate's Office. And because of this, the ultimate sale of a municipal water system to CalAM is highly uncertain at this time, and the city may need to determine alternate sources of funds for the capital expenditures totaling $4.9 million incurred in anticipation of the sale being successful. This is a list of the projects that were undertaken. The main event center and fire museum of $1.9 million, aquatic center improvements of $1.3 million, property purchase of $1.7 million, and the total is $4.9 million. The potential funding sources for the capital expenditures of $4.9 million may include the following options. First, proceeds from the sale of the water rights and municipal water system liquidation. This illustration takes into account the potential donation of the infrastructure assets. Sale of water rights of 986 acre feet at an approximate value of $12.3 million. Estimated cash balance available at municipal water system liquidation of about $1.5 million. These cash proceeds will have to be used to pay off existing debt. The 2008 COPS balance of $5.9 million approximately, and this is a net of cash currently held by the trustee. And we have the general fund loan balance of about $1.8 million. The net cash available after paying off the debt is about $6.2 million, and that can be used for the unfunded capital expenditure. The second option is to use the funds received from Caltrans in connection with the relinquishment of the Lakewood Boulevard. The current cash balance is about $4.5 million. The third option is to use proceeds from the future sale of the former Bank of the West building. And we purchased it at $1.7 million. Until this issue is resolved, the general fund reserve will have to provide temporary cash flows. This is a staff's recommendation to the council. Approve the list of proposed budget and other adjustments totaling $3.9 million for fiscal years 2019-2021 as contained in the fiscal impact section. Formal budget amendments will be presented for council approval at a future date or alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. This concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reed, for that really comprehensive and solid presentation. Let's move on to questions from my colleagues on the Bellflower City Council. Why don't we start off with Mayor Pro Tem Coops?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, one of the things that you mentioned there was that we had the potential of saving $100,000 on employee costs. Remember that was in one of the first slides you showed. And I'm sure that's through attrition or possible layoffs. Way at the beginning.
Is
freeze, personnel cuts and savings. See that? 100,000 first year, 200,000 second year. See that?
Yes.
So does that take into account, you know, talking to PJ today, he doesn't know what's going to happen when he's going to reopen the parks. We got a swimming pool that's not being used. Obviously, we don't need lifeguards there. Tell me a little bit about how it is that we've arrived at those figures. And do you know whether or not personnel has currently been omitted, or is this a future program, or how are we responding to employees?
Right, to arrive at this this line item budget cuts or savings,
Yeah.
I relied on PJ's estimates,
Okay.
as well as the current full-time vacancy, one position. So full-time vacancy, I did a calculation, and PJ provided us with part-time savings in this fiscal year as well as next fiscal year to the best of his expectation. Part-time savings were in the range of $80,000 to $90,000 per fiscal year, and then the balance was the full-time savings.
Okay. Now, item number 7, it says increased gas tax fund transfer. When we built the new parking structure, $10 million, the debt and the bond that we acquired, I can hear the fireworks, Ray, it's just starting. But anyway, I move on here.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah, since it's in my backyard here.
They're beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's just daylight, you can't. But anyway, if we have the debt that needs to be retired, didn't we depend on gas tax?
We depended on Proposition A, Proposition C, and
Okay.
if necessary, Measure R funds.
All right, and those are pretty stable that we'll be able to make our payments on the bond, or are those in diminished situations as well as people drive less?
You are correct. As we have economic downturn, those are sales tax or components of sales tax. So they will be lower, but we have balances, fund balances in those accounts for those funds.
Okay.
So we're still quite solid.
Okay. I wonder if that might have been an expense that we need to deal with if we had no income stream like we had expected.
Right. So you're correct. We're definitely seeing weaknesses in the revenue streams for those, but we have sufficient fund balances currently.
Okay. You mentioned a $50,000 increase in unemployment tax because of the chance that we would be laying off people.
Right. As we cut hours for part-timers or let go some positions, they're entitled to unemployment benefits. So we did some calculation and provided the estimated benefits we may have to pay out.
Yeah, it seems a little low to my way of thinking, depending on who it is that gets the benefit.
That's why we have some cushion.
Okay.
This one, bottom right. So $879,000 cushion,
Okay.
just in case we did not account for all the costs.
There's a slide there, I think just previous to this one, that talks about savings on crossing guards.
Oh,
And crossing $38,000, 1920, zero in 2021. So can you explain how that's going to work? Or maybe you need some help on that. I know I'm picking slice flecks out of pepper here, but I'm interested to see how the school district is going to, because ordinarily that's our responsibility that we've assumed, correct?
2019-20 savings is due to the school closure.
All right, so those people aren't working. All right.
So $38,000 savings is definitely accurate.
Okay.
We're not quite sure what the savings may be for 2020-21.
We're not expecting anything. They may be, the question is whether they reopen in the fall, I suppose.
Correct. Yes.
Refresh my memory on contract services on cannabis audits. Had we put in those stipulations that we would underwrite those audits, and no, we're not going to do that again, or how's that going to go?
I will have to consult with city attorney, but it may be reimbursable through the permitting process.
Okay.
Also, if there's a large variances as defined by Bellflower Municipal Code, then the audit cost can be recovered from the permittee that caused the major variance in the audit.
Okay. I noticed that city clerk's office has offered to save $16,000. I don't know what they got little or nothing upstairs now, and they're going to throw $60,000 on the table. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I noticed that we're going to have to wait a year or so for Len Gurecki's new office at the public yard, as we do every year.
That is currently frozen.
Yes, frozen is a good term. All right, those are the questions that come to mind. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm moving on.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Coops. Mr. Hamada, I'm so sorry about the fireworks. Let's go with Councilmember Dutton.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Let's pull up slide number 3, which is the HDL's forecast.
Yes.
Just a question. We have all the first quarter with a negative and and second quarter with a negative. Are we projection 2021, which I'm assuming is the fourth quarter, along with all of 21? Is we expecting it to be, almost a break-even negative?
Yes, they're expecting break-even negative. Yes.
That includes the whole year of 21.
It includes 2 quarters in 21 and
2 quarters in 21.
in,
Okay.
yes,
Okay, so
2
3 quarters in. Okay. That's kind of. I'm a little more of an optimist. I think we're going to have a little better. And then
I hope you're right.
Yeah. Then I have another question here. I don't know if you're the person to answer it, about closing City Hall. When we close City Hall, it's going to be a 2-week period, even though it's 5 days that we're closing it. Are we not having any graffiti removal through then, any public works on call or anything public works maintenance that they do daily? Are we just going to shut down everything for 2 weeks and have to play catch up? Because being a businessman and playing catch up for over 2 weeks, it seems to cost more money on the other end. That's my concern.
I'm thinking that Mr. Stewart or Mr.
That's a Stewart or Lynn question, I'm thinking. Would Mr. Stewart like to chime in?
Len? Yeah, well, Len?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if when we get to that point, we would figure out a way to program so we do have some coverage. I still have to do on-call staff. You know, we have call-outs in the middle of the night, the trees and all that stuff, but it will be an as-needed basis. And as far as graffiti removal, we can probably program something that would be minimal in terms of cost and just reduce hours to make sure we're hitting the major stuff that's coming up.
Yeah, my concern is, yeah, it's 70,000 is a cut. Is it worth it to do that? I just know we closed for 2 weeks back in, I'm gonna say 2009 for whatever, or 8, and I recall a disaster.
Yeah, I mean,
catch up.
I was next door in Paramount, and we were getting calls to handle Bellflower stuff. So yeah.
But I will share that over the last couple of years, we've shut down all but 3 or 4 days during those periods of time. And City Hall has been basically a morgue during those times as well. So during the time that for the year we shut down as the furlough and worked on a skeleton crew, there's very few calls I think would come through. I think the experience would be a little different this time. I'm not particularly worried about it. With the exception of the emergency calls out in the graffiti, I think we'd be all right.
Okay, well, yeah, you understand your employees and this is what you do. That's why you're in charge. But I just wanted to echo my feelings and what I heard from a decade ago.
No, I hear you, and it's a tough choice to make. But my concern is that we may not be done with budget cuts this year. We'll have to wait and see. And if we really are going to look at the employees for reductions in either part-time or full-time, then this is one of the T's we'll have to cross first before we go there. Yeah.
Okay, that was all my questions there. I just wanted to clarify on that, and it was the thought process on that. And thank you, and Mr. Garza, that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dutton. Councilmember Sunny Santinez.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Tay, I want to thank you for this very comprehensive report. I know that whenever there is a reduction in revenue, there's a lot of work to do. So having said that, I just have a few questions for you, Tay. If you go to slide number 6. On line number 7, increased gas tax fund transfer. Can you talk more about that?
General fund incurs street-related expenditures and costs, and state provides funding to cities through the gas tax, and that special funding source can be used to reimburse the general fund for qualified street expenditures. So we have some cushion to transfer additional funding to the general fund.
Okay, without any restriction in terms of how the money is going to be used.
We are using in the general fund those dollars for street-related expenditures, and those are qualified for fund transfer.
So you have to track those, how those money is being spent under the general fund.
Yes, you're right. So every year we have to keep track of which accounts and which departments.
Okay, very good. Okay, that clarifies the question. All right, and on slide number 7, just to follow up on the question from Mayor Pro Tem Coops, does it mean that we're not going to have an audit in 2019-20?
Right. We're not doing any audit in 2019-20. You're correct.
Okay. So in terms of the agreement, the permits we granted to the licensees, how many years can we go back in terms of auditing their books? Do you know?
I'll think 3 years, but
3 years?
I think it needs to be validated by city attorney.
You can go back 3 years, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and the issue.
So we. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, with regard to the auditing costs, those are in part, although we can recover those from individual permittees if we find that there's a discrepancy. Much of that auditing should be paid for through the permit fees and the administrative fee that the city collects to administer those permits. So that's something that Mr. Ree and I can discuss, but it's the direction from the council from the outset was that no general fund money should be used for any of these cannabis permits. And so most of the costs have been offset by the permittee fees in the first place.
Okay, good. So let's pass on the cost as much as we can. Next question, Tay, is on line number 6 on the same slide. Can you talk about the traffic signal maintenance? How can we save $100,000 on this current year?
What I did was look at the budget versus the actual bills that were paid. And this is my rough estimate of $100,000 in savings or funds that we will not be utilizing. But Mr. Goroki warned me that if there are accidents, large accidents, then $100,000 savings may not be available. But this is just an estimate that we put together to identify areas where we can realize savings.
Okay, all right. Now since our fiscal year ends June 30, so this column of 2019, 2020, they're pretty much, I would say that you have a high degree of confidence that we will have this kind of savings, correct?
I agree with you.
Yeah, because we just have one more month to go. Unless there is barring any disaster, these should be good numbers.
Yeah, one more month to go, provided that we have timely billing from the vendors, yes.
Okay, okay, very good. Now on slide number 9, okay. Oh, slide number 8. Slide number 9, sorry, number 9. Okay, on line item number 3, the temperature check services, can this be reimbursable through from FEMA or the feds?
This was reviewed by Brian at Public Safety, and I think his analysis was that it's not FEMA qualified. It did not fit into one of those categories to be reimbursed by FEMA.
Really? Wow. I'm kind of surprised because
the devices
for safety
are
reasons.
To explain that the devices are reimbursable, but the actual contract service, I will check again with Brian, but he indicated that it will not be reimbursable through FEMA.
So what's involved in this when you say temperature check service? What's involved?
It's a contract service of one person at about $25 per hour.
Oh, okay. So we're going to be having one person to stand by the door and check the temperature of the employees as they come in, or guests as they come in.
Right. Public.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Santanez, if I
Yes,
might
sir.
interject, we do want to discuss that further. Randy and I were just talking about that today, whether or not this is absolutely necessary to do the temperature checks. It seemed like a best practice 3 or 4 weeks ago when we first started talking about it. We're not certain that it is, but for the time being, I'd rather leave the money there just in. But we are going to have a discussion with our department heads tomorrow when we think about reopening City Hall, whether or not this is worthwhile, given what we're learning about the COVID virus and the distinction between temperatures and people actually being symptomatic. So
True.
I know that there may be some division of opinion on that. And so we may have to report out further on that issue after we meet tomorrow.
Okay. And also the other thing is, as Mr. Ree mentioned, he's going to look into that if make sure that it could be reimbursable by the federal government.
Correct. Yeah. And at the time, we presumed it was reimbursable, so it was a no-brainer for us. But now that it's potentially not reimbursable, we're actually rethinking. My personal inclination was to leave it in as a belt and suspenders approach towards safety. But when you're counting pennies, maybe it's not the best thing to do. And I think that's the executive team and department heads. I want everybody to weigh in on that and let me know how they feel about it tomorrow or when we meet.
Okay, all right, that's fair. And then finally, one more question, Mr. V, on slide number 15. On the shelter, on the recurring cost of $2.6 million, is that based on the full capacity?
It's based on current contract.
Current contract.
And I just carried over the current contract cost to year 2, but because current contract is only good for 1 year, it could be lower, but without knowing how much lower, I just use the same amount.
Okay, I guess this is a question for Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, Mr. Senator,
we only have 19.
It's running about half full right now. I think that we'd be looking at an adjustment on that contract if we continue to run half full as a practice. At the inception of this contract, it was that we would run basically a full shelter all the time, and we staffed it accordingly. I still don't know what the operation of that shelter is going to be. It is gradually climbing, and I believe the numbers will go up, but whether or not we get to a running number of 45, 50, I don't know. So that's something to be determined. And Mr. Rhee is taking the most prudent course of action and budgeting out for the most expensive it could possibly be. And we might find some savings on the backside of it.
Well, and that's the right thing to do, to be more conservative. But what I'm getting at is it's conceivable that given the numbers we have right now, there's a potential for some kind of cost savings.
It is conceivable, correct, if it carries on in this way.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Very good. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Santinez. Councilmember Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Tay, for the report. I know this was a very tough one for you, but let me try to go through the PowerPoint. And first off, with the HDL forecast. Thank you. It's my understanding that cannabis sales are up, and obviously they're probably under the food and drug. So that's probably one of the few categories that has kept afloat, and not great numbers there. It's not double digits, but your understanding too, Tay. Has that been confirmed? Are the numbers substantial for them? Are they talking big numbers, or is it just one or two of them that are? I know some of the others aren't going yet. One at least, but 3 dispensaries. So basically, maybe the basic question is, how are they doing?
There are 3 permits for dispensaries, like you said. One is doing great. The other one is doing at about 60% of the top performer. And the second one is in between. So I wish they can all perform like the top performer, but I don't know what's causing the difference between those sales results.
Okay, the next slide, Tay, the one about the general fund revenue. And I noticed towards the bottom, it's the revenue estimates for actually both years. Fines and grants are in the positive. I know that we spent a period of maybe a few weeks that we did not cite street parking for sweeping and things like that, but we're all back to our so-called normal when it comes to citing vehicles and like everything else. So right now we have no waivers, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Yeah. Okay. You had mentioned, I think you touched on, if, I know, again, grants are always iffy. And maybe if you or Jeff or Jim can chime in too, is there anything else down the pipeline that we're working on diligently to secure the next decent grants?
Well, Mr. Ahmad, I will say this, is that one of our consultants has found what she believes to be a very viable $150,000 grant for the operation of the New Hope shelter, and getting information to us. So we will be pursuing that one diligently in the next couple of weeks. And the deadline for that grant is soon. It's at the end of June. So we should know fairly quickly on that.
All right. Yeah. Again, take every opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. We
okay.
kind of hunt the ground for grants. I mean, we're pretty good about that.
Well, that's good, and that's hopefully in like all categories. I know that we had a talk about this before at a council meeting about would it be prudent to hire a grant person, but again, it's there's not always things that are viable out there, and a person's just going to go for everything, but maybe only be successful on a few. So again, kudos to staff for making the efforts and hopefully getting those secured. My colleagues asked about the cannabis audit and the signal maintenance. Thank you for comments on those. Let's go to the provision for certain costs. One, again, it was touched on. It was the temperature check services. Now, being a government agency, were we required to utilize the services of a certified health personnel rather than train maybe staff? There's no options there, or is it just prudent to deal with somebody in the health field? And then, because I know at churches, the churches that are opening back up, they are doing the temperature checks per the county protocol, and it's all volunteers.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is all the above. We originally started with thinking about part-time recreation employees to conduct those checks at City Hall. And the Recreation Parks Director correctly notes that there may be people that are not necessarily conducive or wanting to have their temperature taken. And after reflecting on that and thinking about the cost of using the part-time employees and the cost of using contract security personnel to do that, discretion being the better part of valor, we decided that if we were going to go through this, we'd use the contract help that actually have some training and security issues rather than use the Rec and Parks part-time personnel. And the difference is about $10 an hour in cost. And we thought, all things considered, it was a small cost to keep our employees out of harm's way. Yeah. But like I indicated earlier, we're thinking about that whole program anyway, and we're rethinking how much that actually buys us.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, no, definitely valid on those issues. What was my last questions was related to the Lakewood Boulevard monies available. Is that money not restricted? Are we talking about, but I mean, it's available yet, but is it to be spent on Lakewood Boulevard? It can't be spent elsewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is general fund. It is general fund money. But we are obligated over the next several years to make a bunch of improvements on Lakewood Boulevard. Right. So if we were to use the funds, it would be a short-term loan to be made up for other funds later, because ultimately the city would be responsible for doing the improvements on Lakewood Boulevard. And if there's the savings in the end, great, but we still have the work to do.
Yes, all right. I just wanted to be sure on that. So the last question, the reference to the Bank of the West property as one potential sale. Does the city have any other real estate holdings that might be available, or is that pretty much it? That's right now feasible or the others are to wait. I know some communities try to land bank and so on and feel that's the way to go, but they definitely want, I mean, we all want to see redevelopment of those sites. Definitely.
Yeah.
So on.
Well, we don't necessarily am land bank, and I think Mr. Delalangas, he gets on to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what we have left is the area north of Oak Street on Bellflower Boulevard, the old furniture store site that we're working on with the developer now to get everything done and sell that property. And the other one is the Bank of the West building that we bought for $1.7 million. And Jim, that's it, right? We don't need more. We have that small parcel on Artesia. That's it, right?
That's it.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Tay, again, thank you, and again, staff in whole. It's like you address it across the board. Looks like every department someone had to contribute in some fashion. So again, we all need definitely a lot of good luck there. I'll just leave it at that. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada. Staff, I know this is tough. It's a moving target. It's very fluid right now with COVID and revenues, and the fact that you're, at our request that you're coming here and doing a report that really is a moving target. I just really commend you at how comprehensive it really is, Tay. I wanted to commend staff as well for looking really intently on their budgets and coming up with reductions that they could make. And so again, thank you to every single department of staff for coming up with those reductions, those proposed reductions. As was said by my colleagues, we're hoping that revenues will, that we will beat the odds and revenues will come in and hopefully we don't have to take some of these cuts that were proposed. But again, I just want to commend staff for that. I also wanted to commend staff for coming up with basically a plan B that they propose budget reductions to make up the funding shortfall. And if we still need to make more cuts, that they've identified those for us here as well. So again, very comprehensive, as was noted on page 6, so just of the slideshow. So a good job on that. On page 11 of the slideshow, if we can go to that, Mr. Ree. So on this one, on the 90-day extension that was provided by the governor to our smaller businesses, I'm not sure if we have any idea as to how much that represents for the city of Bellflower. I'm not sure if it's too early, if it's a moving target still.
Right. We don't know for certain, simply because we're not going to have the data for first quarter 2020, the complete data, until sometime in September or October. So if we're to come up with an estimate, it would be just a guess, because HDL did an estimate and their number came in quite high. But yeah, we're not
No
there.
problem. I completely understand, and we'll find out here in short order, right? It's a 90-day deferral. In terms of the larger, the 12-month deferral that was done by CDTFA, so for that one, I understand that the expiration date, I'm not sure if that's the right term, for this deferral would be July 31st of next year. That would fall under the beginning of the 2-year budget that starts next year. So any revenues that are realized by that date they would apply, I'm assuming, to the current fiscal year, the second year of our current fiscal year, correct?
That's correct. So any revenue that we receive in July and August that are attributable to the prior fiscal year, they go back to prior fiscal year. So this 12 months interest-free loan that must be repaid by July 31st, once CDTFA collects those funds and remits those funds to the city by, say, July or August of next year, we have to book it back to fiscal year 2020-21.
Perfect. And so that'll allow, like, if, for example, I know that the proposed, as of right now, the proposed borrowing from the general fund reserve would be 800,000. So any type of revenues that are realized like that would be able to be replenished into our general fund potentially.
Right, it's just a cash flow needs. There's no real damage to the city's revenue per se.
Okay. And then on page 15 of the slideshow, regarding New Hope. So on this one, I just wanted to ask a quick question to Mrs. Stewart, actually. So for year 2 of operations, I understand that our agreement with the Mercy House is for 1 year. So depending on the usage and what we realize for year 1, there's a potential that we may have a savings for year 2, Mrs. Stewart. I'm not sure how that works.
I'm hoping so. Yeah, I'm hoping that we will find some savings and efficiencies in this contract as we go forward. So I'm optimistic there.
Okay. And I know that we're still out there searching for revenue sources at this point in time. And with the homelessness discussion going on at the county level, that's, again, we may realize that. So we're crossing our fingers. We'll continue to explore that as well. And that really completes my questions, Mr. Reese. So thank you again. So with that, why don't we move on to public comment regarding item 12A. Madam Deputy City Clerk, could we open it up to see if we have any questions from the public on item 12A?
Yes, Mayor, I'll give the public just a moment to utilize the feature.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm not seeing anyone at this time.
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy City Clerk. Colleagues on the council, any last comments, questions for Mr. Ree?
Ms. Coops, I've got one question. It may be for the city attorney, it may be for Tay. We have that bank building, the Bank of the West, $1.7 million asset. Could that be utilized as a collateral for a loan where we would retain the ownership of it, but we sucked off $1 million and paid some minimal interest on it if we needed to, or is that not something cities do?
Mr. Coops and members of the council, I will give you my knee-jerk reaction to that, which is it's unlikely. Okay. And the reason for it is that the reason that the city acquired that property in the first place were some changes to the law after redevelopment was dissipated. Based upon those pieces of legislation, the city is now able to engage in economic development under its own authority, under the city of Bellflower's authority. That building was acquired under that program and under that legislation. I think it's probably unlikely that the city would be able to borrow against that as an asset. My recollection is, and Mr. Del Longo is on the phone, I think he is, but my recollection is that the acquisition of that was basically to rehabilitate it and turn it around to make it available to a private developer as expeditiously as possible. We have been holding on to it, and I know that we're going through a process to try to identify something. As we've frequently noted in the past 2 months, everything has sort of been put on hold with regard to the pandemic, but I think those efforts are once again going to be underway.
We also have a commitment to, we're working on that Arkansas parking lot that we were working through a condemnation on. We'll need to be able to write a check for that at some point in time as well, correct?
You're correct. We made a deposit, I believe, with the state treasurer's office for that acquisition costs with the council approval a while back.
So that money's already been put aside?
Right. It's booked currently as a deposit for land acquisition.
All right, so that covers what the value is, the current established value is.
Are you asking for the amount of the deposit?
The amount we offered for the property. Okay.
The answer to that is yes.
Okay.
We covered it through the eminent domain process of the law.
All right. So we don't have to dip into our reserves to take care of that. That's already dealt with.
Correct.
Is there anything else that you can think of that we have responsibility that may not have been reflected here? Or we're all paid up and everything?
I think we've been pretty diligent in trying to imagine all the pitfalls that we could. And I think we've been pretty thorough in examining what our needs will be and how we're going to go forward for the short foreseeable future.
Was it last year or the year before that we allocated money towards our pensions? That's an elective. Was that last year when we had that ability? It was like 600,000.
It was $500,000 a year. You're right. Council took action last year. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something we can forgo if we'd like this year.
Yeah, but I would wait before I do that. I think that's a prudent program, and I think that we should plan to carry on with that until we're absolutely sure that we can't, because that's buying us money on, you know.
No, it's a good investment. I just wondered if we had the
cheap
liquidity
money.
to
Correct.
carry it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Coops. Any other members of the council wishing to make any final questions, comments? All right, hearing none, is there somebody that would like to make a motion regarding item 12A?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I know it's a tough one, but I'll make the motion to approve the list of the proposed budget and other adjustments totaling 3.9 for fiscal years 2019 through 21.
Great, thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, so a motion by Councilmember Hamada and a second by Councilmember Santa Ynez. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Santa Ynez,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops,
Aye.
Mayor Garza.
Aye. Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Item 12B, Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, this is consideration possible action to adopt resolution number 20-24, resolution declaring the Bellflower Municipal Water System infrastructure to be surplus property and authorizing the city manager to dispose of it in accordance with applicable law. And I believe you've already heard a precursor of this, but I'll let Mr. Berger fill in anything that he thinks he needs to add.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As is mentioned in the staff report, on May 26th, the City Council directed that the City Manager and City Attorney return with documents in order to declare the MWS as surplus. That is now before you. The brief staff report gives greater detail, but I don't know that I need to go into greater detail. We've been talking about this quite frequently. The last item does highlight the need for the City Council to consider this item. I should point out that the resolution which declares the MWS to be surplus does have a couple of trigger mechanisms in it. The main trigger mechanism is that while the city manager and the city attorney are authorized to implement that resolution, a couple of things have to happen ahead of time. First, the city manager needs to confirm whether or not the CPUC denies the sale of the MWS to Cal-Am. And if so, then the city manager is authorized to trigger his responsibilities under the resolution. Secondarily, if the CPUC delays any decision on this until October 1st, the resolution assumes that that is a de facto denial of the sale between the city and Cal-Am. The city manager under the resolution is authorized to extend that October 1st deadline or up to 60 days beyond it in order to make that determination. The other part of the resolution authorizes my office to file a lawsuit in Superior Court to seek a receivership for the infrastructure of the MWS. That's in accordance with the Code of Civil Procedure, which would allow the court to take over operations of the infrastructure in order to ensure that water was still being supplied to those approximately 1,800 customers. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. I do believe we've talked about this at length, so I don't know from a factual standpoint whether I need to add anything other than this week and next week, the city manager and I have a number of meetings set up with CPUC commissioners to urge them to to ignore basically the proposed decision issued by the administrative law judge, which right now is recommending that the CPUC not approve the sale. This particular action, if taken tonight by the City Council, would certainly allow us to present to those commissioners our Plan B, which is we don't need to listen to the CPUC's decision on this. We can move forward with our own destiny. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Berger. I'll be joining you on those calls as well. It's going to be interesting. Let's see. Let's start off with questions. Councilmember Sunny Santinez.
Mayor, I think we have discussed this many times already, and I think at this point I'm ready to give staff, the city manager attorney, the latitude to take action. It's about time for us to take action. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
Not a problem. Councilmember Hamada.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Again, to echo some of those sentiments, we have talked about this quite a bit, and this process with the Cal PUC is very troubling, and we have to be prepared. Just like with the budget discussion earlier, this is part of that preparation, and we need to look at the options, and we need to just be ready to, make those tough calls, and hopefully we move forward, and we still take care of this city. So, yeah, we've really talked this one out, and I'm okay with what's presented to us tonight here as an option. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada. Councilmember Dutton.
Yeah, we can't trust the PUC advocacy group, obviously. When I was mayor a long time ago, I was up there in San Francisco and saw the underhanded stuff that they did by keeping documents from us, by holding them under the desk and reading notes, and we had and Jeff Stewart called someone out over it, and it was just unbelievable when you're in a board type of setting room talking. Someone doing that was in. And what I'm saying is, if that was happening then, something's happening now. They say we have a worthless system. Let's give it back to them. That's it.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dutton. Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's as though we bought a property or selling a property and been in escrow for 5 years. And so after that amount of time and so many discussions, it's time to move forward. And I think that we've done everything as a council and as staff to try to be as open and deliberate and thoughtful, what would be best for our city. And I agree with what's going to go forward here. And like my pastor used to say, paint or get off the ladder. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Coops. I agree 100% with my colleagues. So, Madam Deputy City Clerk, can we open it up to see if we have any members of the public wishing to make questions or comments regarding item 12B?
Yes, Mayor, I'll give the public just a moment to utilize the feature. Mayor, I'm not seeing anyone at this time.
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy City Clerk. Okay, so with that, colleagues, is there somebody who would like to make a motion regarding item 12B?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 20-24, declaring BWS to be surplus and authorizing its donation to the CPUC.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Santinez. Is there a second?
Coops will second it.
Okay, so a motion by Councilmember Sunny Santinez and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Coops. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada.
Aye.
Councilmember Santinez.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
Aye.
Mayor Garza.
Aye, thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Item number 13, consent calendar. Are there any items the council members wish to be pulled for separate discussion or consideration from the consent calendar? All right, are there any, anybody wish to recuse himself, any conflicts? All right, so hearing none, is there a
Mayor,
motion to,
this is Coops 13F. I've got property near that fence, so I'm going to recuse myself from 13F.
okay, not a problem. So let the record reflect that Mr. Coops is recusing himself from item 13F. Any other
Yeah,
recusals?
and Juan Garza, Ray Dutton here.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to recuse myself from 13E. I might have a pending conflict, so when in doubt, conflict out.
Not a problem, sir. Okay, so let the record reflect that item 13E, Mr. Dutton is recusing himself from, and item 13F, Mr. Coops. For the balance of the agenda, any other conflicts? Anybody wish to pull anything? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move it. Coops will move it.
All right, so I have a motion by
Second by Dutton.
Okay, so a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Coops and a second by Councilmember Dutton. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Santinas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Coops,
Aye.
Mayor Garza.
Aye. Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Okay, let's go to item number 14, council reports. Councilmember Dutton.
Mayor, I'd just like to thank you for the wonderful job you did last week. And not only last week, but you were, for the rest of the time you've been a mayor, but last week you were tried and tested for sure with the protests that we had downtown. And I'd just like to say, not one broken window. With that said, it's got to be, we could be talking to about if it turned bad, you would get the blame for that. You may well get the blame for nothing happening and it went well planned. It was your 24-hour insurgence prior to that and in planning that led this to how it turned out. And even though us and businesses were on pins and needles, you did an excellent job. You need the credit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dutton. I do have to admit, I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it was absolutely, truly a community effort and a staff effort. So I am only but one person, but thank you so much.
Yeah, if it was a community effort and it went bad, it'd have been you, not the community. So you need
Absolutely.
the credit.
Thank you, as it should be, by the way. If it goes bad, it's on me. So, Councilmember Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly here. First off, I'm okay not seeing the fireworks because they were for the graduates. So, and I want to start off with congratulations to the class of 2020 Bellflower graduates. So back on May 28th, the mayor and I and staff met with 5 of our local pastors, and we had a very informative discussion. And I'll let the mayor finish that when he speaks. But it did lead to some churches opening. Actually, our church opened yesterday, and we had 96 in attendance. We were just below the max, which was 100, the low, and we still had plenty of room for a few more. So churches are back in service, and again, all the necessary precautions. As I mentioned earlier, taking temperatures, masks for everybody, gloves as necessary. So it was everyone was pleased. So I wanted to mention that the YMCA has started its 12th week of distributing food to the Bellflower Unified School District kids. And we found out today that the federal government and the state, Department of Education, cleared it for another 10 weeks. So the site where it's distributed for the public is at 10247 Alondra Boulevard, and that's the Bellflower Nutrition Center. On the 4th, I attended the virtual SCAG General Assembly as a delegate. First off, the Assembly recommended, recognized our own Sunny Santinez for finishing the past year. The next president is Rex Richardson of Long Beach. So Rex takes over, and he spoke at the end there, and he has a lot of good things to move forward on. So we also heard from the Assembly Speaker, Mr. Rendon. Just to wrap up, I wanted to thank one of our residents, CJ Nord, for having a little neighborhood gathering to dedicate one of those mini libraries, drop one off, take one. She had one of her local neighbors build it, and everybody filled it with books. So it's full of books. And so I just wanted to, again, recognize her involvement, and it just shows that there are many ways, to implement, positive neighborhood what kind of endeavors. So that's just one way. And again, wanted to thank for that, and hopefully it'll take off and start growing in other areas of the city. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hamada. Councilmember Sunny Santinez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I want to thank our nonprofits, our businesses, and volunteers for providing food to those who cannot afford to buy food. Those things are very timely, especially during the pandemic. As we inch back to what the new normal now is, I get to go to church now next Sunday, so I look forward to that. I've been away from church for so long. That's something that I really miss. And I want to give a shout out to our staff for opening the farmers market today. I think it's a great turnout, and I think we're inching back to normalcy. And I really encourage our residents to please continue to patronize our businesses, especially the small business here in Bellflower, because they really need us. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Santinez. Mayor Pro Tem Coops.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you remember our last meeting, we were busy discussing how we could try to get the people in business at Bellflower back on track. And we scheduled a meeting, Councilman Sonny and myself, the following day, set aside some rules as to how we would implement the program. And applications have been received, have been evaluated. Staff is looking at them as we speak. So I wanted to assure everybody that the council has been as expeditious as possible to try to make sure that the money that we want to distribute gets distributed quickly and effectively so as to maintain your business. Second of all, I want to again thank the leadership of our mayor. I went out to make sure that I promised him, I said, I'll be there, I'll support you. So I was there on that day when he was trying to delegate and show and keep everybody in the right frame of mind. And I did a great job with that, interacted with the leaders that put it together, and made sure that Bellflower came off looking like a wonderful city that it is. You look at what happened last week in Lakewood and see how easily these things can turn around and become a negative aspect on your city. So it made what happened in Bellflower that much more palatable because it was ran so well and it was so orderly. And to hear that those that were demonstrating even picked up the papers as they traveled down the sidewalks and the streets, making sure that they didn't make our city look like a dump, that they cleaned it all up as they went through, and they were a credit to what happened. But we're vigilant, we were prepared, staff looked into it to make sure that we had the right preparations, and it just turned out that it went well. And I want to thank you again, staff, for our support you gave, and especially to our mayor. It'd be another page in when you're mayor, they put together what looks like a yearbook, and there will be some pages in that book that have never been in any mayor's book before, because there have been so many events during his time as mayor that have never occurred. So give staff something to think about. But anyway, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Coops. You know, I was doing the math, and I'm barely at the halfway point of my mayoral term. So much has happened in the last 6 months. It's amazing. I just, as Councilmember Hamada said on the 28th, he and City Manager Stewart and myself had a meeting with the Bellflower Ministerial Association. It was a really nice meeting that we had here in our City Council chamber. It was the first time we'd been in our City Council chamber in months. Very deep clean, and we spaced, COVID space, so it was a good solid meeting. It was really fortuitous that we had that meeting right before that protest, because when we had that meeting, the idea of the protest that we had in our city wasn't even in our radar. So it was nice to have that meeting, and for them to ask our guidance in terms of how to reopen our institutions of faith here in our city. So again, I commend everyone for reopening those that are super vitally important to us in our spiritual guidance and needs, and fulfilling the needs that we all have. On the 28th as well, later on, after that meeting, we had our ad hoc meeting for New Hope. Again, that took place here in our auditorium. It was a solid meeting, lots of updates in terms of how the shelter is operating since we opened it up, any things that we can improve on with the local community, keeping our promise like we said we would, and we still are. And we were actually happy to hear that some people in that room didn't even know that the shelter was actually already up and running. So again, it's a testament to the City Council and our city keeping our promise to that local community and to our city that we would ensure that facility is helping our Bellflower neighbors who are in need, and at the same time balancing it with ensuring that the effect of this facility doesn't spill over to the local community. So again, we're really proud of that. If you haven't seen the outside, the facade of our New Hope shelter, I would recommend you drive by. It's beautiful. The mural that was finished on the outside of it is really, truly amazing. And I just couldn't be prouder of our staff for all their hard work with that. With regards to statewide issues, as I've shared here numerous times, we were able to defeat SB 50, that really bad housing bill that was proposed last year and that we were able to kill earlier this year in January. Since then, I've been involved with this Senate leadership to figure out exactly what is going to be next to be able to fulfill that need for housing in our state. And so I had a meeting with Senator McGuire, Senator Hertzberg, and staff from Senate Pro Tem Atkins. This week, we're going to be having another one next week, but it's looking really positive for us as cities. We do have to give some, unfortunately, but I think compared to what we're going to give up before, I think the new iteration is going to be much more palatable. So that's encouraging. And in terms of my comments, as was stated before, on the 3rd of last week, we had 4 members of our youth here in our city that put together a protest, and after the fact of the heinous killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. We became aware of it as a council on the 1st of June of the intent of this protest. I think at that point in time, as is my nature, I was hoping to have a communication with the protest organizers, one, just to be able to get to know them and to see into their heart, but at the same time also to be able to try to mitigate for as many unknown possibilities as possible. And so we were able to have that meeting on the 2nd with Victor Sanchez, our chair of our planning commission, as well as with Pastor A.D. Gartney, to be able to have, again, a really frank, open conversation. Obviously, we wanted to protect our members of the community. We wanted to protect, obviously, property, but at the same time, we wanted to protect any members of the community that have a right to be able to demonstrate their First Amendment right that we all have, and be able to protect them as well. And so on the 3rd, the day of the protest, understandably, many members of our community were highly concerned, considering that before that, you were seeing a lot of images on television of the fact that every time there was a protest, there was related lootings associated with it. And I'm thankful that I'm really thankful for the protesters for having done the right thing and demonstrated their message in a peaceful manner. A lot of them were from our city, and the one thing that I kept hearing from them was that they were really, overall, really proud with the progress in our city. They've seen it. There was really no desire to affect our city negatively, either by looting or in another way, in another fashion. And so when that protest happened, I really had a strong faith that we were going to be okay that day. And again, I think the protesters proved a lot of people that are wrong. A lot of people were expecting that it was going to be really challenging in our city that day. So I just couldn't be more proud of our protesters for doing the right thing, standing up for what's right, but at the same time doing it with such a passion and care for our community. I really want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Coops for joining me that day. It meant a lot, as well as Public Safety Commissioner Jerry Trotman for having been there as well. Again, without Victor Sanchez and Nate E. Gartley and the organizers Isabella, Shenandoah, Denise, and Samantha, we wouldn't have the special day that we had. That universally, when I walk around town or I hear comments, just everyone is really just not only thankful for the way it went, but also really proud of the fact that there's people standing up for what's right in our community. There's a lot of hope. Special thanks to Joel Hockman, our public safety director, Captain Springle, and our whole LA Sheriff's Department team. They, and our National Guard as well, they really, really, really did a really great job of being calm and patient with the protesters. A lot of times when activities occur that were unexpected for that day, and I just really couldn't be prouder of them. I know that things have gone sideways in other cities, and I'm just really thankful that in Bellflower we have such a tremendous team, public safety team that balance that need to protect lives and property, at the same time the rights of our residents. I couldn't be more prouder. So thanks to our Bellflower community for the trust, for the support, for the prayers, for the faith, and for the progress. Really, I think these are all demonstrative of the fact that our community is progressing. And last but not least, just the communication. It's really, I think in today's time, it's really easy for us to lose faith in communication. And I think last Wednesday really was an example of that. When we communicate with each other and we just listen to each other, we really, really can make a difference. And so I just couldn't be proud of our community. So with that, that completes my comments. This evening, I would like to adjourn our meeting in memory of two people. The first one is in memory of Mr. George Floyd. George Floyd was born in 1973 in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and was killed on May 25th, 2020, at the age of 46, while in the custody of Minneapolis police, sparking a nationwide protest against police brutality. Protests demanding justice for the tragic killings of George Floyd and others. Those protests demanding the elimination of racial injustice, and those protests demanding police reform have taken place in more than 100 cities across our country, including here in the city of Bellflower and in other countries around the world as well. He is survived by 3 children, and our deepest sympathies and heartfelt condolences go out to the entire Floyd family. And last but not least, as Mr. Sunny Inez mentioned earlier in our meeting, my mother-in-law, Laura Maria Antonieta Blancarte de Ruiz, passed away. She was born on April 26, 1940, and passed away on June 5th, 2020. She was 80 years old. Antonieta was born in Santiago de Querétaro City, in the state of Querétaro in Mexico, on April 26, 1940. She was the eldest of 13 siblings that range in occupations from attorneys to doctors to naval officers, all of them citizens of merit. She was educated in Mexico and became a university professor in history and social science. In her giving spirit, she later became a teacher in rural communities in Guadalajara, where she met and married her husband of 44 years. In 1976, she started her family, and by 1980, she had 4 children, all living in Coachella, California. Her children would like to remember her foremost as being an exceptional mother who educated 4 children practically on her own, all of them who've earned a university degree and have professional careers. They'd also like to remember her as a fighter who twice beat cancer. Also as a team player who worked alongside educators as a teacher's aide in Coachella. And also as a doting grandmother who loved her grandchildren greatly. As a leader by example, she set the bar high and instilled in her children the need to be better than her. Lastly, she was a lifelong learner, as shown through her endless curiosity of technology, communication, and love of reading. She loved everyone unconditionally, and I can honestly say that she is one of the most special people I've ever met in my life, and I consider myself blessed to have even had 1 second to have been a part of her life. She is survived by her children, Isaac, Jesus, Crisoforo Jr., and my wife, Myra Garza. She is also survived by 6 grandchildren, by Ryan, Chris Jr., Celeste, and grandsons Daniel, Benjamin, and Juan Garza. Our deepest sympathies and heartfelt condolences go out to the entire Ruiz Blancarte family. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting of the Bellflower City Council, which will take place at 5:30 p.m. on Monday, June 22nd, 2020. This meeting is adjourned and it is 9:10 p.m. Thank you.